So the topic of the listening is our personal challenge. I'll just write that on the side so that you know what I'm expecting you to talk about and what I expect you to listen to. So we will work in pairs, and there will be 3 parts. And in each of these 3 parts, you will have 3 minutes to talk and 3 minutes to listen. Which means that overall, you will have about 10 minutes to talk about your personal challenge and to have attention to just indulge in. Again, this is listening with the same kind of listening that we've done in the when you're leading at your best example in the morning, and which you've also done in the relationship map listening right now. This is just being at service to the other person's thinking. So it's not, if I work with Martin and Martin talks and I'm listening, it's not about me understanding his personal challenge. It's me giving him the best listening ever and the best attention ever, the best support ever, so that he within 10 minutes gets as many insights, as many ahas, as many deep dives into his personal challenge as he needs or wants. Okay?
So you mean after this 10 minutes, we should understand which are my challenges?
Your personal challenge. The other person will help you.
I'll explain again.
Yeah.
So maybe you have an idea of your challenge already. Some of you might have an idea of a challenge. Like I said, I have a hard time saying no. So if I start with I know my challenge, or I know a challenge that I want to work on, I will use this time to just go deeper, to just understand it better, to just think about it in a way that I usually don't think about it. So just take this 10 minutes as supported time for me to really think about, why is this thing such a fucking problem still? I'm 48. It shouldn't be a problem to say no, right? So what is keeping this a problem in my face? There's another possibility. There's a possibility that I look at, oh my God, all of this is full of challenges. And which of these do I actually want to work on, right? Then you could start with, okay, I have this and this and this and this, and maybe you crystallize until 1 or 2. Getting closer to understanding your personal challenge. That's the overall goal. So depending on where you are now, you said earlier that you would need more time. No, it wasn't you. Somebody said you would need more time to actually lead in all of these relationships. That might be a challenge, or that might be something where a challenge is hiding behind. So anything that you're currently noticing that's interesting about your leadership, that's challenging in your environment, it could be feedback that you're getting, it could be something that you're unhappy with yourself, whatever it is. And the purpose of this conversation is that after these 10 minutes, you have a better understanding. And maybe that understanding is, yeah, this is crystal clear, tomorrow I'm going to solve it. Or it's like, it's still quite confusing, but I'm definitely closer to understanding than I was before. I know where to look. I know where it is. I know how it feels, whatever. Okay? So we'll do, as I said, 3 parts with different instructions. We pause and reflect after every part, and I give you new instructions. The first thing is very simple. Listening. To listen, you just need to follow 2 rules. The first is very obvious. Don't talk. And this is not supposed to torture you. So listening without talking for 3 minutes might be extremely uncommon for some of you. It might be very, very like, oh yes, I don't need to speak. I can just listen. That may be the case, but it may also be the case that you go, how am I ever going to keep my mouth shut for 3 minutes? I don't know you that well, but I've had people like that in the course. So if you really, really need to speak, say something. This is an exercise. It's a safe environment for failure. The aspiration is don't talk. Like, be an example, right? Don't talk. Another thing, I don't expect you to stonewall. You are welcome and invited to encourage the other person to continue to talk for 3 minutes with anything you can but talking. So you can nod, you can lean in, you can or whatever, right? So use your body language, use your facial expressions. show them that you're interested and try not to talk. Okay? The difficult thing comes now. No, you can blink.
Don't drink.
Don't drink, don't drink and don't blink. No, don't think about talking. So try to actually focus your whole attention on what the other person is saying. This is not possible. So this might be possible for some of you. It might be easy for some of you. This is not possible. Unless you are a really, really well-trained meditation master, this is not possible. For most of us, we can consciously focus our attention on something, but we cannot keep it there. To continually focus our attention on the same thing, it needs to be really, really interesting, like a Netflix show or a TED Talk.
Are you saying I should hear what the other person says?
Yes.
And I should imagine in my mind?
No, you don't imagine.
No, but I just listen.
You notice that you start imagining and you go, oh, I want to listen to her. So what happens here is has anybody any meditation experience? So in meditation, you are focusing on something. You're focusing on your breathing, for instance. And then you notice, oh shit, I'm thinking about what I'm going to cook tonight. And oh, breathing. And oh shit, I'm thinking about traffic. I'm thinking about the email or whatever, right? Oh, I'm thinking about how cold my skin feels. Oh shit. So you're focusing back on your breathing. And that's exactly what I want you to be doing here. So notice when your brain thinks about something and focus your attention back.
So in the end, I shouldn't understand what the other person said.
Right.
I didn't say that. And so far, this has not been my experience and not been somebody else's experience. But focusing on the actual listening, hearing the words and letting the words enter your brain, rather than understanding everything, is probably better.
So I would have a brain full of words in the end.
Let's run the experiment and see what actually happens. So like many things that are new, we have lots of thoughts about what might happen. Let's do the exercise and then talk about what has happened. Any other questions? So encourage the other person to continue talking. Don't talk yourself unless you really, really have to. And try to not think about talking. Pick somebody you want to work with for 10 minutes. You will not change your partner throughout the exercise. And remember that you will have 10 minutes overall. So you don't need to finish everything in the first exercise. You will have 3 minutes. And after that, I will give you a bing to swap. So what was that like? Long 3 minutes.
The time was too short.
Harder to listen than to talk? Yeah. Okay. Who was different to that? For whom was it easier to? This is mostly about building awareness. I don't think there's anything right or wrong with any of these preferences, but some of us are really used to talking, some of us are really used to listening, and some of us are used to both. And then some of us like to talk while they think, and some of us like to think before they talk. And there are lots of just simply neurological differences plus habit differences, and it's good to be aware of that. What else?
Me? Well, for me, it was very useful the moment when I finished what I had to say. And the fact that the other person was there without saying nothing, my mind went to the next step, even deeper in the subject.
Yeah.
I suppose if the other person was start talking in that moment, I would have lost the next level of details.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go deeper in the subject. So silence is coming together with listening, yeah.
It was useful and another opportunity to make an introspection on yourself.
Mhm. In contrast to the other opportunities we had for introspection, there have been one or two today. How was this different?
This was more focused. More
Hmm? What made it more personal and specific? Empathy?
The fact that I was actually talking about my personal challenges, because otherwise I would have reflect on what happened during the day. At the end of the day, in my, I don't know, my room, in quietness. But now the challenge was that while I was talking, I was also challenged to think about what my feelings are, what I want to say, how to phrase it, and so on. So it was somehow, I don't know, like I was doing several things in the same time.
Yeah.
It was a very complex process.
Anything else?
For me, the silence was challenging, and not the part about me staying silent, but the part about me having to keep talking while the conversation partner wouldn't say anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course he would nod or whatever.
Yeah.
But not getting any verbal feedback kind of went against all my natural expectations.
Yeah. And again, this is not to propose a new kind of conversation. This is not an alternative. Well, it is an alternative, but my suggestion is not stop doing what you did so far and do this instead. It's just to stretch your experience to something that you're not used to, so that A, you can do that what you've done before with more awareness, and you just have more options. So for some conversations, this might be more helpful. And if you don't know it, you can't make that call. Anything else? There's this artist. I'm not sure where she comes from, but she has an Eastern European name. Abramovich is her last name. Marina Abramovich. She sits in the Museum of Modern Art in New York and in other museums in the world, and she just sits she does other things too, but the thing I know is she sat at a table without saying anything, and people sat across from her, and just some people spoke to her, some people just enjoyed the attention silently, and very frequently people would break down into tears just because they had this unwavering attention of another human being. They didn't even know. My most drastic experience with this exercise was at a conference in Cambridge, where I did a very small version of this, just 1 minute, no, I think it was 2 minutes each, at the beginning of a workshop. And after 1 minute, I noticed that a lady in the audience started to cry. And I made eye contact because I thought there might be something wrong. And she was like, no, it's good. And she came to me after the workshop and she said, Olaf, I just started crying because after a minute I realized that this would be the first time I would be able to finish that story. They didn't talk about the challenge. I just asked her to share a story. And that was touching me so much because I thought, like, 2 minutes? Like, you don't have anybody to listen to you for 2 minutes? That can make such a difference. So, and sometimes people come into our office and just want to share something, just want to get something off their chest. So just to give somebody attention can be a great gift. And again, this is not the leadership tool, but I think listening is a very important leadership tool. So anything you can do to stretch and improve your awareness about how you listen and how you listen well and what kind of difference you can make with listening, that's the purpose of this exercise. Anything else you would like to share about the listening only part? In the next round, you will be asked to speak, and in case you haven't guessed that from the agenda item yet, we're building up to the kind of conversation that you've been doing in the morning with the leading at your best. So for the next exercise, you will still be listening. And what I would like you to do is to repeat key phrases that you have heard. It could be a single word, it could be a sentence, it could be a few words that have been mentioned within a minute to just summarize something. I don't want you to add anything, so don't make it into a question. You can add a question tone to it if you want to. But just try to offer some scaffolding for the other person's thoughts. So this is just to be support. I don't know how to draw scaffolding. So it's supporting what they say, right? Someone said earlier it's hard to speak for 3 minutes without having any clues and any help in the conversation. This is to help with your attention, to help keep up their attention. So that you just acknowledge, okay, you've talked about this and this and this, and then they can go on. You might also repeat a specific word you think which might be worth going into, which might worth going deeper into. But that's just a suggestion. The main purpose of this is to just support their thinking and speaking process with your repetition. So it's not about parroting. That would be similar in terms of repeating words back, but this is with the intention of supporting. So when we've paid attention here, what we're doing now is focusing attention. So you will notice that you actually have influence on the conversation when you're just repeating. And I would like you to pay attention to that. Okay? Otherwise, same setup, 3 minutes each. I will give you a bing after 3 minutes to swap. You continue talking about your challenge. Don't repeat what you've said before. Continue. It's not about boring the other person.
On the same personal challenge. Okay.
Okay? Go ahead. So, apart from you being harder to stop this time, what was different?
Did you enjoy it?
You started to enjoy it. You enjoyed it too? So what made you enjoy it more now?
You started to see other perspective. You started to see the other perception.
How did you see the other perception? Or which other? Like you as the speaker saw the...
The other speaker's perception.
Okay.
My listener perception.
So how did repeating their words improve your perception?
I was not saying that was my perception was improved. Just to understand and to see other opinion, other perception.
Okay.
So
Now I got it.
maybe
No. Now I got it. I was just curious.
For me, after repeating a couple of times, my word completely blocked me. I got blocked at the moment.
Okay.
And I didn't know where to go.
And what happened then?
Sorry?
What happened then?
I took a break for a couple of seconds. I ran a check. And then I continued from a new point, I would say.
Uh-huh.
It was something like a roulette. It was rotated and then I stopped to play it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Russian.
By the way, what happened then or what happened next is another clean question. What happened or what happens next, then what happened just before is also something. Things in our imagination are always in, everything that happens in the brain happens in time. So you can always make the assumption that something happens next or something happens before. Also, everything in our imagination has a space, so you can also make the assumption that something is somewhere, which is why where is anything you said is always a valid question. They might not know, they might not want to tell you, but it's always a valid question. What else was different compared to the earlier listening-only experience?
For me, I became more aware of the language that I'm using. So basically, I use sometimes hard words, and it is not the case in that context of discussion. So I need to mind a little bit the message.
Hard word?
Extreme words, let's say, often that it's chaos or which is not too much. Yeah, it's too much. So I think I need to tone down a little bit.
Like exaggerations?
Yes.
So one thing that's excellent that you're saying this, because one thing that this clean language does, and also this whole listening and awareness building does, is we pay more attention to the words we use, and to some extent every word is a simplification and a generalization. So you can't eliminate that from your language. But we always, not always, that's the point. We often, to make a point, to stress something, to accentuate something, we exaggerate and we use bigger words, etc. And that's sometimes very helpful, but it's sometimes limiting. And what changes when you train yourself like this is that you do that when you really want to make that difference, instead of doing it all the time, because then it's actually less effective. So one of the interesting things for me learning clean language, so the first effect was that I was very surprisingly noticing that as soon as I started to keep myself and my shit out of the conversations, especially in coaching, it was becoming a lot more effective. To somebody who is a coach, that's not very surprising, but to me, as a coach of many years, having heard that the client has all the resources they need to understand their problem and find a solution, you might have heard that somewhere. I knew that, but I didn't believe it. Because the people I worked with usually didn't understand Agile, they didn't know how to build software, they didn't really know how to treat their people well, etc., etc., etc. So there were lots of judgments in my head. And as soon as I learned clean language, I noticed these and put them out of the conversation, and I became more effective. That was great. But the second thing I noticed is that when I'm not clean, I'm not clean with intention, and then it's a lot more impactful. So when you are putting your stuff into the conversation all the time, it's a lot less effective than when you put it into the conversation at the right time. And this is the kind of practice that we want to build here. What else did you notice that was different?
Compared to the first one, I think this time was easier to speak as listener as well. Having the interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't feel as alone in the conversation, right?
Yes, it's both sides.
Anything else?
I don't know, probably because it was the second iteration, but I didn't really have time to repeat anything. And also he didn't for me.
Okay.
It was a lot easier to talk and listen.
Okay.
So the one maybe word that had a very big impact on changing the conversation or steering the conversation.
Okay, so you did not interrupt each other at all, or not add something at all?
Very seldomly.
Very seldom, yeah.
It was going, and
Yeah.
then, okay, this.
Yeah. So I didn't actually say that, but if you do this like once per minute, or even less, that's usually enough. So in 3 minutes, 2 or 3 times is enough. Obviously, as you want to practice, it might be helpful to do it a little more often, so that you just train your brain to actually listen accurately to the words and repeating them, etc. But in a real-life conversation, this is exactly what happens. And sometimes, that's why I was asking, the switch from here to here, just removing these tight rules, makes the thing a lot more relaxed. So even if people don't use this repetition at all, it already feels very different because they could. They could have said something, so it didn't feel as constrained.
It's also a certain, I don't know how to call it, certain level of trust and relaxation in communicating to the other person, because it's the second iteration and
Yeah.
you're already establishing a relationship, and although we don't know each other, but we got into this game and accepted the rules, and we're open and communicating honestly.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yes.
So when you emphasize the words,
Mm-hmm.
naturally it comes to me to justify. To justify why I chose
Uh-huh.
the words, so it's okay to do that in a conversation, so... Or
If you feel called to do that, do it, experiment with it. My assumption is that, so I can relate to that, so I'm projecting a little bit now. My assumption is that this is because we interpret the repetition in the context of how we usually talk to each other. So that response of yours, this emotional, like, ooh, I'm being questioned, might not be appropriate in this conversation. So reflect it with your partner, and if she doesn't have any intention of challenging your choice of words, then you can just let it pass and notice, okay, this is something that my system is doing, but it's actually not helpful. So this is a lot about making habits conscious so that we can choose how to behave instead of just having automation run the show. Anything else? Okay, then let's go to the third and final part of this exercise. And this time you are going to be leading attention. And this is very similar, but hopefully with more awareness than what you did this morning. So you use these two questions. Also use the repetition. It's very often good to repeat, okay, this and this and this, flow and easy and something, what kind of easy? So that people actually know what you're asking the question about. So combining the two. If any of the other clean questions that we've covered so far, there are 15 or something in the whole set, works really well. So if the where is question or the what happens next question is like just the thing you need, use it. But the focus is use these two questions. These are like the two questions that make up 80% of every clean interaction. So again, be the most helpful service you can be to the other person's thinking. My assumption is we're going into more depth or into more unexplored territory of the challenge now. So what people have said here might have been what they already knew. What they said here was somewhat exploring the boundaries of that, and now they're going deeper into something that's really interesting. So you can help them discover something they don't know yet. Be appropriately curious. Any question? Then you have another 3 minutes. Go. like the training is designed to keep you out of your habit zone as much as I can for as long as I can during this day. You were asking about how is my experience with this thing actually changing something. This is why it is actually high. This is also why I did not give you any space to introduce yourself in the morning, because any chance for you to put your normal work ego into this room gives you a lot of less chance to actually change. So now you have established relationships that are far outside of the normal relation, at least for some of you, far outside of the normal relationships you would establish in such a course and in such a work-related environment. And that gives you the option to actually change something significant by tomorrow. The reason that I like you're tired is that when your prefrontal cortex is tired, a lot of your emotional control and a lot of your normal regulation is tired as well, which means that your adaptability in terms of unusual habits is a lot higher, right? Because a lot of time when in an awake state, your prefrontal cortex would say, no way I'm going to do this. Now at this state, it would just say, fuck it, okay. Rather than arguing with Olaf, it's easier for me to do this weird exercise. So it's, and yes, it's exhausting. I know that.
Listening is exhausting.
Yes. So what else? What else was different compared to
We discussed
number
a
one?
bit earlier about communication as an essential skill in relationships building.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that my partner in conversation now asks me questions, argumented questions, made me feel him more present in our conversation and was more gave me another level of engagement in going deeper in my argumentation and in my
This is actually very essential to this kind of conversations.
It was like in Shutter Island. You saw the movie? You saw Shutter Island with Leonardo DiCaprio? You go deeper and deeper in a dream, basically, in order to.
That was that's Inception. Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it was this movie
Yeah.
that I was thinking about. You know, the fact that while I was speaking, you said a word and your partner in conversation asked you a question. It's like challenging you to go deeper
Yeah.
to the next level and to the next level and so on.
Yeah.
And maybe if the exercise would have take longer, these levels would have been more and more and more deeper.
Yeah. So a few things contribute to this. One is using the clean questions in a very simplified way. If you use them the way that David Grove would have used them, they are actually trance-inducing. They have a very hypnotic quality. For most of us, this level of attention that we're getting here is already so unusual that it also has a little bit of that effect. So like just Martin focusing on you, repeating the things that you hear, that he hears you say, and asking questions about that increases your attention so much that it almost feels like a trance. The other thing is that most of us are not used to this level of respect. Like to actually pay attention to every word you say, to remember them accurately, and to even ask curious questions about that, that's about the most respectful you can get in a conversation. And that opens up a lot of defenses. A lot of things that we would not open up in a normal conversation with normal people in this kind of thing, because he pays that kind of attention. Suddenly it enables you to go places where you usually would have some, I don't know, whatever. They would not be no-go areas, like I don't want to talk about it. Clean language doesn't go through that kind of defenses. But it opens up a lot of things that are usually like, not so accessible. And that creates this quality of conversation and creates this effect.
Actually, now that I'm listening you, I realized that I was thinking while talking to Martin that I'm talking about something very personal to somebody that I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
And I was, it was, well, no.
And the fact that you don't know each other actually makes it easier because you also know that he won't meet you again after tomorrow. So this exercise is more difficult with people inside a company that you are going to, because then everybody's like, oh, what am I going to talk about now? It still works, but it does have a different effect.
Was it the same
Yeah.
for you too?
Wait, that's not-
Sorry?
Anything else? Anything you would like to add? I did totally not keep my promise that this exercise will be over in about half an hour. So I'm aware that it's taken an hour now. So I would like you to have a break soon. Anything you would like to add? Anything you noticed that we totally didn't speak about yet?
One question that came in my mind was, when should I stop the other person, or when should I put a question? When her speech is fluent, or
Don't want to bother the other.
Mm-hmm. So in a training environment, when we are practicing this, it helps when the person speaking occasionally takes a breath. Right? Usually, unless I have a coaching conversation, and like when I'm coaching somebody, and we have a limited time, and I hear them talking about details that are neither relevant to them nor interesting to me, I will stop them. But this is not a contract you have here. And this is probably also not a contract you have with the people you lead at work. So either you need to clarify that at the beginning of the conversation, like what do you want me to do? And if I come to you and I say, I would like to spend the next 15 minutes, I would like you to help me think through this. Okay? Then I give you a mandate to interrupt me, because after me blabbering on for 3 minutes, you could say, Olaf, stop. And I would like, and you could just say, this is not going to help you through this. You're just dumping information on me. You're talking about stuff you already know. So you're not learning, I'm not learning. Right? And then you can ask a question. You can say, so what I heard you say, ha, ha, ha. What kind of bullshit are you talking about there? Assuming bullshit is a word I used, right? But you need to have a contract for that. For a normal conversation, to have somebody talk for 3 minutes about something that is relevant, just don't interrupt them, right? If your attention is enough, if this is enough, then you don't need the additional tools. To add another answer to your when do I ask something or when do I repeat something question, I think at the beginning you just follow your gut, and you need to learn what works and what doesn't. There's no science to this. I have read some advice on like which things to pick, and it hasn't really felt useful to me so far. So if you want to dig deep into the clean language literature, there are books, etc., feel free to do that. But my so far experience has been, if I follow my gut and just point at, oh, that sounds like something where something might be behind it, and then I'm asking a question about it. There's not more to it than that.